This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am here today with none other than Magdalena Kaiser, who's joining us from the Wine Marketing Association of Ontario. Now, Magdalena, we haven't seen each other since before the pandemic, so it's a great pleasure to see you today. But let's rewind back to the beginning of the year. And may I ask you, when did you start feeling the first rumblings of the fact that this then nascent pandemic could have an impact upon the wine industry in Ontario and your participative members?
Well, that's kind of a complex question
Oh, of
because
course, yeah.
I think, as we know, so much happened so quickly, and none of us expected that we would be in the scenario that we are. I would start by saying the first that I kind of really heard of the pandemic or the issue was in January, late January, after we had a sommelier from Shanghai visit us, and that was still well before restrictions were put in place and before we realized that things had moved to Europe, and of
Hmm.
course, not imagining what would happen to us in North America. So, in fact, in March, we had two tastings, one in Toronto and one in Ottawa, which were well attended by wineries and also trade. So, really early March, I still think that, we knew about it. We knew that it was now in Europe, but we didn't realize to what level because I think, as I recall, it was just really only Spain and Italy. Italy, I think, actually more even than Spain, if I'm trying to
Right.
remember properly. And so I was actually traveling to Europe uh, for work-related items, and then and the premier, as I recall, was encouraging people to travel and go on March break trips. So I think that really kind of reminds everybody of how nobody really understood the impact at that
Indeed.
time.
Yep.
And it in literally in 1 week, in less than 7 days, it really just the whole world turned upside down. And I think we were all just taken a little bit by surprise to the level of impact. So that's what really happened. And then every single day of information was just so much information at one time. And so I guess that's how I would describe it. It's just really sideswiped, unknown, that kind of thing.
And how did you see the Ontario wine industry pivoting or adapting to the new restrictions that were put in place? Because some wineries have really flourished with both their online sales and with their, I guess, their wine tourism over the summer.
Yes, certainly the world, as anywhere in every industry, has pivoted really quickly. Um, and so there was a lot of learnings very
Yeah.
quickly. Wineries that were already, I would say, prepared or more prepared were those that had really good websites set
Yeah.
up for online purchases, and those that weren't as ready really had to make those changes quickly. And wineries were very early on offering free shipping to Ontario consumers, which I think was, really a powerful message to the local Ontarians to say, we're here for you. We will deliver our wine to you. And so curbside pickup, making sure that people could purchase wine really safely and easily. So that's what they really worked at, I would say, right away. And in order to get that message out, I think, more than ever, people are really turning to social media for information as well, because things change so quickly that
Yeah.
it's even hard to change websites and change information where consumers can get it easily. So updates on Instagram are actually one of the most effective, quick ways that people could say, oh, that winery is open or this winery is offering these kinds of things. So that I would say is the early days. And then I guess to touch on the tourism perspective, we represent and promote wines from all across Ontario. And one of the challenges, of course, is that every single region opened up for tourism very differently.
Right.
So everyone was in different phases. It wasn't one message to say, everyone's open, everyone come back. So it was really it was a really careful and challenging process to kind of communicate to people that wineries actually never had to really actually close their tasting rooms. They did so by choice in the early days. And then they worked hard to put programs in place to ensure that there was a systematic way to ensure their own staff was safe and that visiting consumers were safe. And so I guess, yes, there are lots of things that have come out of this where wineries have changed their business plan or the way they do things that may have some positive effects. That some wineries are saying to us, you know, the things that are good for us are that we can actually set up tastings, know the staff that's required to be on site at a winery any given day, because things are more organized. Things need to be
Right.
booked
Right.
ahead of time and that kind of thing.
So without the walk-in business.
Yes, I mean, they certainly do have walk-in available at some wineries, not all.
Right.
There isn't one, you know, again, that's one thing I need to remind people of, because there's 184 wineries in Ontario and each has a very different size, capability, staffing, and business model. Some sell, you know, some were definitely more impacted by the fact that restaurants were closed, for instance. So if your business was really dependent on that, that was much more challenging than for those that maybe didn't. Um, and so some wineries are open for walk-ins, but if they are, then there's a process, of course, that has to be put in place, taking information on where the people are from, that there's only a certain way that things can be tasted. So just a very specific, yeah, process, I guess, for the experience.
I had heard anecdotally that the wine trail in Ontario had, particularly in Niagara, I believe, had been very popular this year. What with people not being able to go on their trips to Napa, Tuscany, and the like, they had found a little bit of vinous solace in Ontario wine country.
Well, we don't have specific numbers. I happen to live right downtown Niagara on the lake,
Mhm.
so um, I I can see the cars come and go
Yeah.
every day. And I would say that yes, absolutely. I think Ontarians were really anxious. Well, people living in the city, Toronto being the biggest city base, um, looking for places that they could go and feel safe and have space around.
Yes.
So I think that certainly that was the case. You know, I've driven in areas where there's hiking opportunities and being out in by the lake and things like that. So um, my understanding is that yes, in certain parts, people were visiting wineries more. But again, that was different for Niagara than it was for Lake Erie North Shore or Prince Edward
Yes,
County.
of
My
course.
Prince Edward County probably got a lot of people once they were open. Lake Erie North Shore was much later that they could host people.
I
So
see.
and so again, a lot of this is anecdotal, and more research needs to be done to find out exactly kind of what the volume of people have been. Mhm.
Speaking with a number of your members over the past few months, there seems to be a kind of consistent story that people have turned towards local when it comes to purchasing wine. Have you witnessed any of that yourself?
Well, we certainly hope so.
Yeah.
We, you know, one of the hurdles that we've had in Ontario, and I've been in the industry from the very early days, is convincing our home market that we have world-class wines. They're right on our doorstep. Very much part of my job is, and our marketing team at WMAO, we're a small team, small but mighty, and really telling that message to say that we have this here. And so I think that Ontario consumers are generally looking for local. So it was an opportunity to really try to make those emotional connections with consumers with local wine. And so we actually launched in July our Embrace the Taste of Home campaign, which is still ongoing. And I think that really that term, it says so many things. Um, I think because also people were having to stay home more often, certainly during lockdown, but are staying closer to home, and that Ontario wine, BQA wine, is their home. And so I we think that this is definitely making an impact. And again, it's going to take some time to really resolve the sales in the different channels to understand that as that rolls out in the coming months. Mhm.
Throughout the length of this pandemic, Magdalena, what kind of support was your membership asking of you? Not, I don't want to go into any specific details, but I'm just interested as to um, how they wanted you to assist them with mitigating and managing this pandemic.
Well, I would like to just remind everyone, I guess, I know it's confusing that there's so many different organizations in Ontario. The Wine Marketing Association is actually not membership based. We have
Sorry, I used the wrong term there. I
No,
understand.
that's
Yeah, yeah,
okay, because there are organizations, the Ontario Craft Wineries are membership
yeah.
based, and the Wine Growers Alliance of Ontario and it's actually Ontario uh, Wine Growers Ontario now. They've changed their name to the Grape Growers of Ontario. All of those associations are membership based. So is BQA Ontario when you register your wine with
Yeah,
BQA.
yeah.
So the Wine Marketing Association has been given money by the Ontario government to promote all VQA wine. So we do have programs where people contribute to if they're interested, whether they want to be in the travel guide or they want to participate in a
Right.
trade. So certainly, again, I would say that out of 184 wineries, and certainly in a very stressful time, and, and even when it's not stressful, there are different priorities um, for for producers. So we do get information. We have a marketing committee that we meet with regularly, and we get information back. They represent kind of their organizations, and that kind of funnels back to us to give us insight on, of course, what their thoughts are. And we look at an overarching the challenges as an industry and prioritize as we always do and make a strategy around marketing. So certainly there was all kinds of things that people were concerned about,
Yeah.
and yeah, really just getting the message out to consumers that buying local now, I would say, was a priority, but that's always been a priority. So it's just for us, it was a little bit more of pivoting the type of messaging that was appropriate during the beginning of this pandemic. We really, people couldn't travel, so we had to make a change into our marketing by not releasing our travel guide right away,
Right.
by not sending out the message to people that you should travel to wine country right now because you really couldn't. You could pick up wine. And that was the other thing is balancing. You can come and order wine and pick it up at curbside safely, but you can't stay in a hotel and you can't go to a restaurant or do
Yeah,
any of these other
yeah.
things in wine country. So I have to say, this pandemic has, not just for our industry, but certainly others, but it is one of the most complex times to be a marketing person because you are trying to encourage behavior or provide information for people that they can purchase wine safely, but the different ways and how they can is not the same, and people have a different comfort zone. So how do we tell people that to make sure that we're not offending people, making sure that there's still a positive energy in a very stressful,
Yeah. Yeah.
difficult time. It's really complicated to do that.
I can only imagine.
Mhm.
Now, you've mentioned restaurants twice. You work quite closely with restaurants, of course, because a lot of Ontario wineries, one of their main markets are restaurants throughout the province and out with the province. I don't. I don't expect you to have any crystal ball here, but what are your thoughts about the restaurant industry going throughout the winter that we're just about to enter into and coming out in the spring? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, again, it's we don't have a crystal ball. I think definitely restaurants, Ontario restaurants have been a really important part of the community, the Ontario wine industry community. Certainly more for some Ontario wineries than others.
Hmm.
But as our organization, we've always been very closely connected with that trade community by providing opportunities for tastings. And then, of course, the opportunity to sell wine at their stores during this time. And as today's date, I haven't seen any changes on the law, but I know that there people are waiting for that information to see if that will be extended. One of the drivers behind that movement was actually Marcel Morgenstein from Pondview Winery. So he was really pushing to make that happen, an Ontario winery person, and that really helped make the change for Ontario restaurants. And so I think that was a great opportunity for businesses to stay open differently. And so we've always, with a lot of our marketing programs on behalf of the industry, even in our social media contesting for consumers, providing gift certificates to restaurants that, support local VQA wine to keep these connections and community alive because they're an integral part of the fabric of Ontario's VQA wine industry.
Yes. Yeah. One thing we haven't mentioned is I4C, because of course we went through the summer, and normally one of the highlights of my summer is coming down to Niagara for I4C. Would you mind speaking a little as to how you managed that event this year?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, the as with anything in the industry, events have been hugely impacted, and that of course has had a really big impact on many Ontario wineries that depend on, for instance, weddings and bigger events. The I4C was this year was our 10-year anniversary, so it was really we were excited,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course, as usual. Andrew Jefford was the keynote speaker and as with many events, we had regular meetings leading up to the when the decisions we were going to make about the event. And so the Wine Marketing Association is one of the primary sponsors. For us, the I4C has been a great platform to build momentum around Ontario wine on an international scale, but also from the international visitors that we host, the media, like Andrew Jefford and Jamie Good and others that we've had over the years. And so, of course, we wanted to still do something even when we made the decision to not be able to do something live. So we decided to do a virtual event. And again, at that time, there's been many, there were very many learnings, and what we know now about virtual events was very
Yes.
different than what we knew back in May and June when we were trying to build a program. So we went ahead and did that very quickly, pivoting very quickly. And what we did uh, is we built a program still around really the 2 days, the Friday and the Saturday. So the Friday is the School of Cool, as you probably remember,
Oh, yes.
about education. And so the exciting thing that we did was we had, and I'm not sure if you've had a chance to watch it, it is available on the I4C website.
Yep.
But we did have Andrew Jefford still be and hopefully, I know you were invited to attend the sessions and hopefully you were able to. Uh, and so what we did was we thought we would have Andrew still do the keynote presentation, usually about 15 to 20 minutes on his thoughts on the state of Chardonnay globally, and then actually interview several past keynote speakers. So I think the fact that we had Andrew Jefford interviewing Matt Kramer, Karen McNeil, and Ian Dagada in a 1.5 hour session was just really, really exciting and
Yep.
interesting. So it was, to me, really, we had so many compliments from people about that was the best virtual webinar they have ever seen. It was really great. And for Ontario, it was really wonderful because I was able to ask them at the end really what they felt about Ontario Chardonnay specifically, what was unique to them about it. And each of them, took a couple of minutes, and the words that they used, considering that they're four very different people, and the way they expressed how they feel about Ontario Chardonnay is, to me, just it fills my heart when I listen to what they said and when we look at the quotes that they used and the words that they used. So that was wonderful. And then in the afternoon, we did another virtual session. We partnered with Wines of New Zealand and Chablis. And we did a session really just to talk about those three regions, cool climate, what defines cool climate. And we had media from across Canada that was in that session. John Sabo moderated that. And then the following day, we did a little bit more focus on consumers. We did a Zoom call webinar with consumers, encouraging people to, open a bottle of Chardonnay,
Mhm.
learn a little bit about Chardonnay, tune in. So that was also very successful. And we launched a number of videos over that weekend on all the sub appellations in Ontario and what that means for Chardonnay. So we really just put a lot of energy into making sure that there was still conversations about this. People love this event, and we really had a lot of compliments around the things that we were able to do virtually. It's challenging, but we're really happy with the results. So hopefully that answers most of your questions about that, or did I miss
It
anything?
most
Or
certainly does. I did actually, I was actually listening in on the New Zealand Chablis Ontario seminar, and I thought it was very well done. I think
okay.
John always does a great job
Yeah.
moderating those kind of things. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Magdalena Kaiser, thank you very much for joining us today at Good Food Revolution. I know you're a very busy woman, so we do appreciate you spending some of your morning with us today.
Well, as always, it's a pleasure to talk with you, and thank you for having me. And I hope you keep safe and that we get to see each other soon.
That would be fantastic. Bye for now, Magdalena.